Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Tony Grote. I am IPAF's North America Regional Manager, and today's presentation is going to be on the introduction to IPAF's 2025 safety campaign, Stop Turnovers. Safety starts from the ground. To be clear, this is not a training session. Today, you may learn some things from and gather some new knowledge from some parts of the presentation, but today is really the introduction of the safety campaign that we hope that you will engage and use during the course of this year. So a safety campaign is designed to raise awareness and promote behaviors that will reduce risk and prevent accidents. The main purpose of the campaign is to educate the public. So these presentations, informing people about the potential hazards and the best practices to avoid them, promoting safe behaviors that will encourage individuals and companies to adopt habits and actions to enhance safety, prevent accidents and injuries, reducing the likelihood of incidents through the proactive measures and clear guidelines, and creating a safety culture by building an environment where safety is shared, valued, whether in the workplace, out on the road, or uh, on job sites, and providing resources and training. So, offering you tools, information, instructions to help people respond effectively to emergency situations. So, overall, the safety campaign plays a critical role in mitigating risk and fostering environments where individuals are better prepared to handle potential dangers. So again, as I said, the hope is that at the end of today's presentations, you'll see the value in this year's campaigns, and you'll be able to go to our website, get this information, and continue to share it out in the marketplace. So the beginning part before we get into the presentation itself really is having you an understanding about why we're even choosing this topic. You know, what is the purpose for us having this campaign on preventing turnovers. So as we look at it, hazard recognition and avoidance is the foundation of all safe use practices. And IPAF's mission is to promote and enable the safe and effective use of powered access equipment. It is vital that we identify potential hazards associated with their use. And to that end, IPAF has been gathering accident data worldwide specific to MEWPs for decades to identify leading areas that require action to improve safe use. Accident data is collected from industry stakeholders on incidents that they're aware of. That data is analyzed to provide actionable information that provides focus areas that will impact industry standard, training, safety campaigns such as this, and raising general awareness to all industry stakeholders that can mitigate or eliminate hazards and their risk. So I'd like to just give you a 1-minute overview of IPAF's accident reporting. It's easy to go online, report incidents. It's all anonymous. And all of that data provides us with real information so that we can take action. So I encourage all of you to consider uh, joining us, taking your part in reporting accidents as we move forward. So there's the website where you can get into logging that information. And now my system is locking up on me here, so give me a second. So when we look at our data that we get through our reports. Our fatal statistics from 2021 through 2024 shows us some very clear information. So it showed us that we have 87 falls from platform fatalities. So in 2022, we had our first campaign that addressed falls from platforms. In 2023, our second campaign was addressing high voltage, and where we end up having crushing incidents during that period of time, where we had 36 fatalities, and we launched our campaign addressing crushing incidents in 2024. And as you know, today, 2025, our new campaign is to prevent tip overs and overturns. So if I go and we look at our accident statistics, after the campaign was launched in 2022, the number of incidents initially increased. So if you're looking at this information from 2012 to 2024, you can see here that the number of incidents initially increased, but reports dropped off significantly from 23 to 24, raising a question about whether this indicates a true decrease in incidents or simply a reduction in focus, along with notable declines in reports. So we look at this data and say, all right, what is the impact of our campaigns? Are we actually taking actions that will reduce these incidents, which is ultimately our goal? In 2023, our electrocution campaign on high voltage, this led to a slight drop in the number of incidents, a reduction in fatal incidents from 2023 to 24, but an increase in reportable incidents. This campaign actually garnered over 9,500 views on it. So if we get people out there using these things, we're hoping that we can stop the trend and lower the amount of incidents we have driven through our safety campaigns. And launched in 2024, our entrapment campaign, Crushing Can Kill. This here we see a raise in the number of incidents, while fatal incidents were on the upswing in 2022, following a significant decline from 2020 to 2022. The campaign received over 13,000 views from 110 countries. So again, as we're looking at accident data reporting, again, this is MEWP-specific information that we as IPAF pulled through, and you're looking at it, you can see here in terms of the frequency of incidents, overturns are one of the areas that obviously required our attention. And hence, we end up having our campaign on MEWP tip overs. So MEWP tip overs continue to be a major cause of serious injuries and fatalities in our industry. With the launch of our 2025 global campaign, Stop Overturns, Safety Starts at the Ground, we are reinforcing a crucial message: ground conditions matter. By understanding the risk and implementation of proper safety measures, we can prevent overturns, protect lives, and create safer work environments worldwide. So again, these campaigns are out here for us all to work together to make a measurable impact to decrease these incidents in our marketplace. So the key message that we want to really put out here is that these incidents do cause serious and fatal incidents. They can lead to ejections from the work platform of operators and occupants, and they can lead to complex rescue scenarios of trapped individuals at height as well. So understand that when we're talking about overturns, overturn is a permanent loss of stability of the MEWP, so that the MEWP has overturned or partially overturned. So this can include those things that are resting against a external structure as opposed to completely falling over. So all of those are what are included with our analysis of an overturn. So if we look at our data from 2014 to 2023 on overturns, there have been a total of 108 fatalities. And it also includes 64 major injuries, 25 minor injuries. And these are only the reports, obviously, that we get reported into our system. So I will tell you that our assumption is there's more than that that occur globally in the marketplace. These are the items that are up on our reporting structure. And from those, you can see that obviously with an overturn, the majority of people who are impacted by this, 184 of those are the MEWP operators. But we also have delivery drivers, service technicians or engineers, company staff, and one person from the public. So you can see that while we can focus in one area, we really have to be aware of all of these elements so that we can take appropriate actions in all of these areas. Interestingly, we can see that the reports entered into the IPAF portal is on the increase, and you can see fatal reportings are decreasing, which is obviously a good thing. So again, we're finding that we're getting a lot more reports over there, and some of those reports can be near misses, can be which are things that are very difficult for us to see, which is why it's important that we get grassroots involvement in the reporting so that we look at the frequency of incidents and the consequence of those incidents. So again, from the data from 2021 to 2023, we actually had 52 fatalities and 33 major uh, injuries from this. The most common place for these incidents that occur are in construction sites, commercial premises, public areas, roads and highway, and rental yards. So think about the wide range of places that these incidents can occur. So if you're only focusing on construction job sites or you're only focusing on road and highways, you can see that you're going to miss some of the actions that need to take place. So the data is really important to come up with the analysis to take actions on. The types of MEWPs, the mobile elevated work platforms, aerial lifts for overturns are, and we have them in the 3A, which is scissor type lifts, 33%. 1B, which is what we call a static boom, requires outriggers on those types of machines when it's elevated, vehicle mounted, 28%. 3B, which is the mobile self-propelled booms, 23%, and 1B, which is the static booms tracked, which are 12%. So when you're looking at this again, it's telling you that it's not just one type of a piece of equipment that's overturning. We have machines that are with outriggers, without outriggers. We have machines that are vertical lifts and some that are boom lifts. So there's a wide range of products that need to be addressed and when you're looking at putting in appropriate action steps. And non-fatal injuries resulted, there are fractures, concussions, bruising, impact pain, cuts and lacerations. So you can see that there's a wide range of impact that is reported that we need to make sure that we are taking the appropriate steps on. So I'm going to share this video. Now, this is an older video that was taken several years ago. It just happened to be outside the UK health and safety executives' offices. And you can see here there's a boom lift and a scissor lift doing work on a site. And as you're watching that boom lift, what you will identify is that we're going to have a collapse of the ground surface underneath it. So there's a vault underneath it. You can see it crashing through there. And now you can also see the scope of how other people can be involved in this type of accident. So it's near a roadway. Fortunately, it didn't land on any other vehicle or persons. You can see shortly that the machine itself catches fire. So there's a wide range of incidents that need to be taken into consideration of the potential risk and hazards that can occur with this type of an incident not just with the operator themselves. Again, assessment of the ground conditions and supporting structures is really critical. And we have recently developed this new guidance document that is available, free, downloadable from our website, Ground Conditions and Supporting Structures for the Safe Use of MEWPs. So within this, you can look at, there's several approaches within this guidance document. One is it's into two main parts. One is for the guidance for the MEWP users, and within the scope of that, that's those people who are in control of the operations, not the operating of the equipment itself, but the operation of the site. And it has sections that talk about dewatering, suspension floors, and temporary works. And the second part of it is guidance for the MEWP operator. So it really is a wide-ranging document that provides it for both planning and for the operation of the equipment. And for the operator, it focuses on MEWP traveling on uneven grounds, elevated, stowed positions, slopes, and positioning. So there's a wide range of information that's in this document that ties to our campaign on, all right, we need to be aware of it. Now this is taking actions on how to protect ourselves. So when we're looking at this and the information within it, we talk about ground and surface for the machines that are operating on. So we end up having unexpected ground movement. So you end up having it on near the edge of a embankment, or you're driving over a vault in the ground. So you're going to have a wide range of unsuitable ground conditions, floor surfaces, frozen ground that's beginning to thaw. So you end up having environmental conditions that are out there that tie into weather conditions as well. So beyond the ground and surface, we also look at the MEWP operator. Within the scope of the MEWP operator, the one thing that we look at is a lack of training or familiarization or incorrect setup based on having insufficient training and familiarization. You have individuals who are out there who deliberately override safety systems, such as the envelope control system. We have supervision that's required to ensure that we have an avoidance of misuse of the equipment. Driving at height when it's not necessary. So when it's fully extended, we have one of the, I'm going to say, more weaker positions for stability of mobile elevated work platform, and driving over uneven ground and not following all the operating requirements from the manufacturer, and overloading the platform. So again, all of these things are items that the operator themselves have to take into consideration. And then we take the machine itself. So is it properly inspected and serviced, that we have mechanical or technical failures? Are we driving it onto a hazard that's not capable of supporting the MEWP itself? So if we have a machine that's what we call snagged, where as an example, where it's lowering, the platform comes down and gets snagged onto some structural item. And then what happens is that you continue to lower, rather than the platform moving because it's snagged, it actually lifts up the machine, and we end up having a snagged platform and a very precarious situation that needs to be dealt with. And then we have the impact with other equipment, gantry cranes, suspended loads. So there's a wide range that can impact the MEWP itself. So that's an example of one of IPAF's, what we call video shorts. So it's a tool that also is available for you to download and use that within your campaigns and presentations, whether it is within this campaign specific to overturns, or using these within your training programs. It really identifies this issue, which is understanding ground conditions. In that particular case, one of the things that does happen with some regularity is driving over a vault in a sidewalk that cannot support the total load of this equipment. So again, planning is really critical. So while we are always aware of the fact that we need to have proper training for operators, that is an essential component to it. But we need to do planning before the job even begins. So when we're looking at this, it starts with doing a site assessment for the correct MEWP selection. And we'll get into that in a little bit later into not just is it a boom lift or a scissor lift, but other attributes that a MEWP needs to take into consideration in selection. The ground bearing pressure surveys. So what is the ground capable of supporting? The consultation with those in control of the site itself. So again, if you're working on doing one part of the job and you have other people over there doing other things like excavating around the job site, and not you're not aware of them taking it and not compacting it properly, you need to make sure of the site conditions. When you're looking at the ground conditions, believe me, most operators are not going to be sufficiently technically able to understand, whether certain ground conditions can support the load or not. You provide them with a lift, you put them out on the job site. So you need to, in your planning, consult with engineers or which is either a civil engineer or a structural engineer, based on the material that you're working on, whether it's grade material or whether it's on a supported deck, to ensure that it is capable of supporting the load of this equipment. It really is critical in training, and this training, I'm going to say, goes for both a MEWP operator and MEWP supervisors, is they must be included in the understanding of MEWP stability. When you're looking at our industry standards and the curriculum that's required for both MEWP operators and MEWP supervisors, understanding stability is a critical part of that training. So there are many factors to consider that can impact MEWP stability. So just reading off this slide, you can see, is it a hard level surface? What is the allowable slope allowed for that machine? What is the slope of the grade that you're working on? What's the platform capacity? So we're not overloading the platform. We have live loads. What is the overriding? Are we overriding safety devices? Oh, that thing is beeping. It's annoying me. And, we go in there and we shut try to disconnect incorrectly, overriding safety devices. Higher pressure, big item as well. Ignoring safety alarms, stability of the ground surfaces are amongst many items that must be taken into consideration. So again, as we now look forward in understanding MEWP stability, there's a wide range of information that is important for people to really have some basic understanding of this. And again, as we all know, gravity is king. So it's important that the MEWP operator and supervisors understand this information. Simply stated, gravity is the force that pulls an object to the center of the earth, people and MEWP included. To make an object more stable, you can lower its center of gravity. With a MEWP, MEWPs are more stable when not elevated because it increases the weight of the chassis. You can increase the area of the base. The wider it is or the longer the chassis, or like adding outriggers to it, provides that additional stability. So that gets into somewhat of the selection of the equipment itself. Be aware that when you're going over and you can point at the manufacturer and say, well, why don't they design these things so that they're going to be greater in their ability to be stable. Understand that if they increase the weight of these machines, they could become so heavy that you can't put them on any ground surface. If you go over there and you increase the base of them so large, you can't get them into the places that these machines need to go into. So there is a design theory behind all of the machines that you're seeing out in the field, and giving you a wide range of options in the selection of them to ensure that you're getting the right machine for the right job, task, and that will safely be supported by the surface that you're on. So this diagram shows how the lowering of a boom angle affects the center of gravity. So if you're looking at these two, the top picture looks at it and you can see how this is positioned. And you can see the counterweight on this thing when it's elevated, there's a greater load on that side where the counterweight is. And opposing that, when you're looking at the boom extended out in the lower position, there's a greater load on that side. So if you're looking at it, where is the tipping point of those machines? It's where is that load? Where's that center of gravity? And it really is having that understanding. So, and then if you're looking at these things both being on a flat line, think about being out on a job site and that line is tilted so that the slope is going one way or the other. What's the impact on that machine? So even though we're on level ground, if we take that and we change that slope, you can see how that will additionally impact the stability of the machine. So it's being aware of these, I don't want to say nuances, but characteristics that it's really critical when you're out there trying to be safe. There's also the understanding of the point load variable. So when you're looking at a boom type lift, and here you can see with these pictures, the bearing pressure on the tires and outriggers can change significantly with a change in the configuration of the machine itself. So as you see those highlighted pictures where they're red, a majority of the weight is shifting to those tires as that configuration of the machine changes. So too often people go over and look at a lift and say, okay, if this machine weighs 20,000 pounds and I'm going to go over there and I have 4 tires, well, that means that I have 5,000 pounds under each one of these tires. That is not the case when you're looking at the change in configuration, because there are times when you can have almost 3/4 of the load over one of those points of contact based on the configuration. And as a byproduct, you need to make sure that as the point load change, the load bearing surface of the supporting surface must be able to accommodate that maximum load pressure. And if the worst configuration of the MEWP in design is exceeded, and that means that if I'm taking it out and I have it machine at its maximum load and I have it at its maximum slope and I have it with its maximum extension, and you put all those things into place and you do something wrong, that you exceed the slope or you exceed the maximum allowable load in the platform, well, any of those things deteriorate the protection that you have for the stability of these machines. So while we're looking at the selection of the MEWP, again, too often we're looking it up in the air. We're saying, all right, and again, our focus here, it starts at the ground. So we begin with this mindset that I need to go up there. So I'm looking at what do I need to get up there? And we're looking at how high can it go, how far can it reach, and what's the capacity of the platform. But the ground bearing pressure is really critical. So the surface area of the point of contact of a tire of a MEWP is relatively small. So that contact area of that tire, it is small, which can generate significant pressure on that surface area. It's essential that an assessment of the ground conditions, taking into consideration the manufacturer's floor point loads, is carried out before even beginning a job and selecting the MEWP for the job. A tire that's too hard or too soft will impact the way that the machine contacts the ground as well. When carrying people and material at height, these factors are extremely important in the safe use of the machines. This slide shows how a tire displaces the load on the MEWP onto a supporting surface. It's easy to see that a track machine can lower the ground pressure of a similar tired machine by 80 to 90%. This can be the difference between being able to access an area or not, and the cost to move the MEWP that is buried up to its axle is very expensive. So ensuring that you have the right ground conditions and the right tires and contact area pressure is really critical as well. Too often we'll go over and just say, okay, we could go with a lighter machine. We have machines that have outriggers on them, but it really is, again, outriggers provide two, uh, several stability advantages that a tire machine doesn't. They increase the base of the machine to displace the load and are generally equipped with spreader pads to increase the load bearing surface of contact. And many of them weigh much less than a MEWP that has counterweights to allow you to go to those heights without outriggers. At the same time, stability is dependent upon the distribution of the weight on the ground below. And this is similar to the needs of tires making contact with the ground. Spreader plates used with MEWP outriggers spread that force from the outrigger leg to the ground surface. And a lot of times you can see the spreader pads need to have a plate underneath it to spread that load out further. So depending upon the ground surface that you're having, you can see all these configurations over here that, too often you're not working with a nice flat surface. You need to make sure that you're setting these things up properly and preparing it for its use in operation. So when we have that unlevel surface again, now we talk about cribbing underneath it. So again, think about, we have this manufacturer who's well designed this machine to do all the work, but now you're putting it out onto these ground conditions that are questionable, that they have no control over. And you need to make sure that you're doing the proper work to ensure that that load is placed onto the ground effectively. So again, there's lots of information that's out there. Here you can read through all these charts that do not use cribbing on a flat surface that's not firm, capable of supporting the weight of the load without the cribbing. Do not use cribbing over a hole, depression, or a bump. Do not crib a machine that on a slope of greater than 5 degrees or 9%. And the manufacturers in their operating manuals will have information over here that provides this guidance as well. So make sure that you're reading the operator's manual to ensure that you're following all of these guidance. So again, this is kind of an example of some of the ratings that the manufacturer provide out in the marketplace. It's really critical to make sure that you're aware of those and following those in place. So this is another one of the videos that IPAF has in some of our training programs, and it talks about subsurface voids. So here it looks like we have a good flat surface to drive over, and as you're going over, we have subsurface voids. And it really is critical to understand that, if this were a parking lot or even a parking garage, while this is designed to take the load of a vehicle, car, you're looking at a car weighing, 3 to 5,000 pounds, where one of these machines weighs 20 to 30,000 pounds. So the design for this may not be made to support the load of a machine going over it, which is why we're talking about having people who understand the loading, who can tell you that information, and don't expect that an operator is going to have that information to say, oh, okay, this is here. They may raise the flag and saying, do we know, I see that this underground surface area may be in question, but again, you need to go to somebody who has the technical expertise to really define whether it is safe or not to use, and whether a different machine should be selected because of the weight of the machine. Again, our focus for this campaign is about ground surfaces, but there are other areas that you need to be aware of that impact tip overs. So I'm including those just so that we are not going to side note to some of these other areas, which is hit or struck by and roadways. So again, our IPAF accident reports tell us that MEWPs are being hit by vehicles or objects is still very commonplace. When you're working alongside roadways or next to crane operations, you need to make sure that you put control measures in place. You have planning and supervision. You try to segregate the machine really well from it. You put lighting or signage in place, and you make sure that you reinforce the training and familiarization with the operators about the potential hazards with these particular hazards on that site. So again, taking into that risk assessment and coming up with method statements and control measures to mitigate any of these potential hazards. Again, in that same breath, being struck by, you end up having cranes, oftentimes feeding the work materials onto the uh, proximity of the MEWP operations. And again, these are really critical things where planning is essential, and you need to make sure that you are doing what's proper in your planning, risk assessments, and actions to protect your workers and others in the area. Within our standards also talks about unusual supporting conditions. It's really critical to understand, and you can see some of these pictures here. It's not uncommon that we see a MEWP being used on a barge, but there are risks that are associated with that. Obviously, the one where it's on the back of a truck, uh, that generally will never be an appropriate operation. And here you see one that is a picture that's been out in many of the social media forums out there of this device that was made for this working on a pool area. So again, from a standard perspective, it's very clear that the language says do not operate a MEWP except for loading and unloading purposes from any position on the truck, trailer, rail cars, loading vessel, scaffold, or similar equipment unless the application and the methods are approved in writing by the manufacturer. So again, these are areas again where we're talking about tip overs and concerns is an area that really takes very specialized knowledge to confirm whether it's appropriate or not appropriate. Otherwise, the answer is it's not appropriate. Again, struck by falling objects. Unfortunately, we're in situations where we've had buildings actually collapse. Uh, you end up having you know easy things to mitigate. So while we're out on the roadway, we're talking about vehicles out there. Obviously, we end up having forklifts and moving loads in areas that are adjacent to where we're using MEWP operations. Unfortunately, it's common to hear about several incidents every year that an overhead door is open, so we don't have the lockout tag out, and that opens in an area where a MEWP is being operated, and we end up having a tip over. So struck by areas are another place of consideration. So if I get to the end of this, it says, so what do we need to do to be safe? And the short answer to that is that there's no shortcuts. Success lies in overcoming obstacles every day. So while you can go over there and you say, this is what I was planning, job sites change, conditions change. You were planning on working in the front of the building, but then you have to drive around the back of it to store it at night. And you never thought about that when you're doing your risk assessments. So you need to be very thorough about your risk assessments and planning. One of the very critical elements that was introduced in our most current ANSI safe use standard is the requirement for anyone who's operating the equipment to develop a MEWP specific safe use program. And this really then details all of the attributes, not just what we're talking about today, but it does include that as well about doing the risk assessments and all of the appropriate assessments and methods to protect workers in the operation of this equipment. This guide is also available for free on our website and has lots of accessory tools that you can use as well in your planning. one additional element that I will add is that when we introduced these new standards in 2018 and beyond, we introduced a MEWP supervisor, which is a person assigned by the user to monitor the operator's performance and supervise their work. So there's lots of responsibilities that a user has that are not responsibilities for an operator. So while we do operator training, he's not necessarily doing risk assessments. He's not necessarily doing the selection of the equipment. And he's obviously not capable of monitoring himself and developing his skills and knowledge as we're moving forward. So it really is critical that you understand the requirement that a MEWP supervisor be involved to ensure that the operator is being compliant with all of the requirements that are put in place. Within MEWP supervisor training, these are the specific elements that are part of the curriculum for them. The proper selection of the equipment, the rules and regulations that apply to its safe operation, including all the elements in the A92.22 safe use standard, and again, that safe use plan, understanding potential hazards associated with the MEWP, be a focus of one of these items today, which is machine tip overs, ground conditions, and knowledge of all the manufacturer's operating manuals, which says, I need to make sure that in this particular case, I'm not going to be driving this machine in grades that this machine is not appropriately allowed to operate in. So there's lots of information that they must possess and ensure is taking place during the operation of all of this equipment. Included in that is making sure that the access, preparation, and maintenance of the site is in place. How often do you see these types of pictures that are out in the field today? Which is, a rough terrain machine doesn't mean that it can go any place and not have any impact on it. You can see what we talked about, which is the requirements for making sure that we end up having a sufficient support surface underneath the machine. You can look at improper grading. So there's a machine up on the upper left-hand picture that has improper cribbing underneath it. So here's a machine that was operating outside of its allowed gradability. So the machine wouldn't operate. So they had to go and put blocking underneath it to get it leveled up enough so the machine would operate. Not the appropriate stability underneath those tires to ensure that we don't have a tip over. So again, there's lots of things that are out there that you need to be aware of in regards to the stability of these machines. So at the end of the day, we now have this campaign that's out there. We have lots of tools for you. And here are some of the resources that we have. So again, we have this new safety campaign and others that are on our website available for you to download. We have our new ground assessment document, that document that I showed you earlier, that's available for you to do assessments of ground and provide that education that a supervisor and even operators can benefit from knowing about. And again, you need to make sure that your people are properly trained and supervised. And IPAF has our online supervisor e-learning course so that if you're a supervisor, you can take this online course 24/7, any place in the world that you're at your own time and pace. So you can go over there and look at that. And last but not least, as I mentioned in the beginning, we really do encourage all industry stakeholders to consider reporting any incidents that you see. So while we can visually see reports on the news or that go through the OSHA reporting structure that says here are these incidents that occur, the near misses, the minor injuries that may take place, we may never see. And those things have an impact in places that we may have a perception that are an issue, but again, it's very hard to take action on information that you don't know. So we really do encourage all stakeholders in our industry to really look at that action reporting. It's anonymous. So what we're looking for is this incident happened. This is the overview of what the incident was about, period. Move forward. So we really do encourage and appreciate your contribution to this online reporting. Again, while we have this campaign, we have been identifying safe use practices for many years, and IPAF has a full collection of what we call anti-access posters and some corollary uh, toolbox talks. So these are available on our website and available for you to garner, look at, and move forward with. So the one thing that that I bring out in most all of my presentations is feeling safe and being safe are not the same thing. And too often you can look at lots of pictures that are on social media that you shake your head and you say, well, I can't believe someone's doing that. And too often those, I'm going to say, extremely unsafe conditions don't result in an accident. So they're not going to initially even show up on an accident report. And because there wasn't an accident, does that mean that that was a safe job site? And the fact that they got the job done, they may get kudos, high fives for getting the job done. But it doesn't mean that because they didn't have an accident, they were safe. It's not the same thing. Safe people do what they need to do, whether they feel like it or not. It's really a critical element. It's sometimes I'm out there and I got to get something done quickly. So sometimes we do things quickly, and quickly doesn't mean unsafe, or it doesn't have to mean unsafe. So again, it's doing the right thing all the time. So again, we have a safety campaign, and the safety campaign isn't just about us raising awareness. It's about all of the elements that I talked about up front. It is about prevention of accidents. It would be great for us to go over there and have these campaigns and people embrace them and change actions, activities to ensure that we reduce these incidents. So we really do encourage everyone to get involved, be part of the solution. Uh, Again, part of my marketing is if you're not an IPAF member, consider joining. If you need training, contact IPAF or an appropriate source to get your training. And we will have our annual event in October in Nashville, our Work at Height. So please consider registering to attend our event. And with that, I am concluding today's presentation and am open to any questions. So there is a Q&A button on the screen. And if somebody has a question, you can hit those. And Anna, I know that you're there. If you can pull them up because I can't see on my screen the Q&As. If there's any questions, let me know. You there, Anna? You're muted if you are.
Hi, Tony. Yes, I'm here. There is a square on below the page. So if you have any question, please raise your hand or add a question, please.
So do you see any questions coming up?
No, not yet. Okay, yeah, we have one from Guy Talion. Suggest whether be considered frozen ground wind forces.
Say that once again, Anna.
Suggest whether be considered frozen ground wind forces. Let me type it.
I'm trying to. So, thank you. So weather conditions to consider are pretty, I'm going to say, pretty detailed. Wind is one of the leading causes that we really address because there's a very limited wind capacity. It's unfortunate that, as I said, when you're looking at all of the attributes for a manufacturer to design a machine upon, and they have to go over and say, what is the load capacity? What is the slope that it's on? What is the wind capacity that we take this machine upon? Oh, I'm going to have to get back in here. So wind has been very much a part of tip overs and overturns. So that's one of the leading issues that are out there, especially the higher you go, the more impact that the wind has on it. Uh, Weather conditions beyond that, you're looking at, if it's raining out and the ground in the morning seemed like it was solid, and then in the afternoon you're going out there and you have rain. Depending upon the soil that you have, can get very soft, and all of a sudden now, as you're driving, especially as we one of the things that we try to say is don't drive in the elevated position if you don't have to drive in the elevated position. So that's the weakest position that you have. So if you get up and you're elevated, as opposed to being retracted in driving, and you're elevated, and now you have this slope that's in there, that becomes an issue. In the great Northeast, I'm in New York, so we end up having freezing and thawing. You can get to the stage where the ground is as hard as a rock. And then when you come to the spring season, and even in the course of a day, at night it can go down below freezing, and then during the day the sun comes out, and you end up having ground that is, was holding it yesterday but won't hold it today. So there's lots of elements about weather conditions that need to be addressed. Some of those are very well spelled out within the ANSI A92 standard, but there's lots of other resources that address that in more detail. Any other questions?
No. Any other questions?
Okay, if there's no other questions, I greatly appreciate everyone's participation today and joining us today. If anyone has any suggestions of other topics that you think would be beneficial, I'm going to go back in here. Share. Beneficial for us to see or talk about in the future, please send us an email and let us know about it, and we'll address those. But again, this is our 2025 campaign. I would love to see us look at our accident data next year and see, 0 accidents for tip overs. But at a minimum, go over and see a significant reduction. So really raise the awareness of this, make sure that we take actions to mitigate that hazard, and be safe out there. So thank you all, and that concludes our presentation today.